So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Maintaining Practice Profitability with Paolo. We're really excited to have Paolo Lencioni, as you can see, Director of Profitdiagonostix and APL Accountants, to take us through the key metrics practices need to look out for and how to best make business decisions in the light of the COVID-19 recession that will undoubtedly affect us in the near future. We're also very lucky to have Mike Mesley from Snowy Vets in New South Wales. He is, however, at Mount Palliser. Am I saying it right?
Perisher. It's Perisher. He's muted now.
Mount Perisher, enjoying a bit of snow there. And we should have Shibli Mustafa from Mount Gravatt Vets in Brisbane joining us shortly as well. Both are practice owners and mutual customers of EasyVet and Profitdiagonostix as well. And they're here to share a bit about how they're using the reports pulled from their practice management software and also their accounting software. So just a little housekeeping before we move on. If you've got questions for Paolo, Mike, or Shibli when he comes along, simply add them in the Q&A chat box found at the bottom of the Zoom screen. I see you've been using the chat box, that's fine as well. I'll keep tabs on that. So as some of you know, Paolo is a registered accountant, so here's your chance to ask for some financial advice, and he promises he won't be sending you the bill after the webinar. Hey, Paolo.
No. It's for me, it's like you guys can ask me whatever you want. When you guys have taken your time out now, over lunch break to do this, and I promise I'll entertain you. I don't hold anything back, so you can fire away with it, whatever you want.
And my other note is that a recording will be shared with this as well if you wanted to pass it on to a colleague or review said advice from Paolo. So on the agenda today, as you can see, Paolo will take you through the 5 important KPIs every practice needs to know and what it'll look like post-COVID-19. He'll take you through veterinary industry benchmarks and accounting data as well, along with latest trends and insights performed over the initial wave of COVID-19. And that's the Victoria stats that I know you pulled out last week or so, Paolo. And then we'll follow up with the customer panel with Mike and Shibli, and we'll end with the audience Q&A from all your questions. So without further ado, I'll pass you on to Paolo.
All right, guys. So for me, really, for those of you who don't know me, I used to be a veterinary surgeon. I found veterinary science too exciting. And then I became an accountant, and I also did some software development work. Some of you in the audience may know me quite well because I've done some accounting work for you, or actually actively clients of ours. And some of you probably don't know me, but yeah, I'm there for the veterinary profession. APL Accountants is an accounting firm where I'm one of the founding partners, deals exclusively with the veterinary industry. At any point in time, we're probably dealing with around 250 veterinary practices, and then very hands-on, probably with about 70 to 80 practices with virtual CFO type work. So we have a real sort of insight into what's happening in the veterinary industry, particularly around Australia and New Zealand at any point in time. And that's where we kind of get all our information from. And then obviously having founded Profitdiagonostix, which is a data software for veterinary practices, we can actually pull active data from any practice management software. In fact, all our clients use Profitdiagonostix. So we have real-time data feeds from all our client practices where we can measure the volume of work they're doing, the number of consults they're doing, all that sort of stuff. So we can keep really, really close tabs on what's happening in the veterinary industry. I only do no sales web events, right? So if you like what I say, you probably like Profitdiagonostix. If you don't like what I'm doing today, then you probably won't like Profitdiagonostix. But this web event actually for me isn't going to be about Profitdiagonostix. I never do that. It's going to be about you, and I'm going to show you some really, really interesting stuff that actually not even APL account clients have seen yet. We've got some really, really interesting data indicating what's happening with the veterinary industry currently, and what I think, I'll give you my opinion as to what I think is going to happen in the next 12 months going forward, which will help you with some strategic planning. I guess what we'll do, Kimberly, now is let's fire off those polls, and I'm going to actually ask, fire off one of them, or the one about the revenue and primary consults, because I really want to know, I want your opinion on the poll as to what's actually, since April, what has actually happened to your primary consults? What do you think's happened to your primary consults? And what's actually happened to your number of clients? What do you actually think's happened in that space? And fire away with the poll. And while you guys are answering that poll there, Mike, I'll ask you, because you're actually a vet in practice, what do you think's been happening with your primary consults, or what has been happening with your primary consults and your number of clients?
Yeah, so our number of primary consults has hovered around the same, but probably just lower than normal for this time of year, Paolo. And yet our number of clients has increased slightly, and our revenue has increased slightly.
Okay, cool.
That's the situation on our ground.
And why do you think you've had an increase in active clients? So, like, I'm jumping the gun here because I don't script any of my web events, but why have your active clients increased and your primary consults decreased?
It's an interesting question. My opinion is that because we're doing well, I think a lot of people who I've spoken to have said, people are at home staring at their sick animals and thinking, oh, wow, I didn't realize you were that crook, or, oh my gosh, you actually have lost weight, or whatever it is. So I think we're seeing more sick animals, and yet doing slightly less routine health work, partly because in our case, we can't fit them in. Like, it's so busy that we're having to sort of delay some stuff. So I guess in general, that means more clients coming through the door, but the same clients aren't coming through the door so many times. And because you're doing less, you're doing probably more high value work and less low value work, that would sort of fit with the revenue increase. So that's the way I've read it, whether that's the truth or not. But I know that those numbers are correct, but whether that's the cause of it, as always.
Kimberly, they seem to be struggling to answer the poll. I've just seen something come into the thingy. Do I have to submit it, or I don't think? Can you guys see the poll? Just quickly pop that in chat. Can you guys actually see the poll? Ah, there it is. Here it's come in. Okay, cool. It's come in. So yeah, can everyone see that now, Kimberly? I think they can. So basically what we're seeing here is 83% of you think that your primary consults have increased, and 93% of you think that your number of clients have increased, right? So that's really, really interesting, because that does match up with the kind of information we're getting, and actually very contrary to the economic information we're seeing all around us. And so we can actually close that poll there. I can actually close it, I think. Boom. Okay. Is it gone? Yeah. Okay, so what I'll do now is, some of you might remember at the EasyVet conference, I think it was more than a year ago now, I spoke about the 5 most important KPIs in the veterinary business. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the 5 most important KPIs in the veterinary business, explain to you how they work and what they are, and then explain to you what's happened since April to July and how those KPIs have been affected in April to July, and then try and predict, based on what we know, what we think is going to happen in the next 12 months. So that'll give you a real powerful information. And those of you that are already on Profitdiagostix or know Profitdiagostix, that is the KPIs we have on the dashboard we call the Business Health Check. It gets emailed to you once every month. You can log in and look at it. But these KPIs are already there for you on what we call your Business Health Check. Probably the most important veterinary business 101 health check that you have in that system. All right, so looking at that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same case studies that I used at the EasyVet conference, because a really, really good case study to explain the KPIs comparing 2 practices. And these 2 practices are compared using 2018 data. So this is pre-COVID data. And I'll use these then to explain to you how the KPIs work and what we're actually measuring. And then we'll have a little bit of a discussion as to what's happened since April with those particular things. So this to me is the most important KPI in veterinary practice, and that is your active clients. The number of clients that a veterinary practice has, it's inherently tied to your goodwill. You might have the best equipped practice in the world, you might have the best consulting efficiency in the consult room in the world, but as a veterinary practice, if you don't have enough clients, you're never going to make enough money. Okay, so measuring active clients, to me, active clients is probably one of the most important things. So here I have practice A and practice B, and there's 2 very, very different profiles. So I'll just explain to you that measuring a value on its own is actually quite meaningless. So if someone says to me, I have 3,500 active clients now, the question I will ask myself is, okay, is that increasing or decreasing? So I like to know a trend in everything. So these are the kind of dashboards we put on Profitdiagostix. Now, this is something you can get out of your practice management software. You just have to pull out the right reports. So anything I'm going to discuss here, you will be able to dig out of your practice management software. It'll be a bit of manual work, but you will be able to do all the stuff. So again, Kimberly, sorry, I'm going to ask them to do this in the chat because it's kind of just chattable stuff. But if we're looking at that blue line in practice A and practice B, and this is in fact real data which we've randomized. It's true case studies. We just randomize it by 3% either up or down, so it can never be identified and it's completely anonymous. But if we look at that blue line, that is the active client line for practice A and practice B. And each data point means what they were in each month. So 1 month ago, for example, if we're looking at practice A, 1 month ago, they had just under 3,500 active clients. And then 2 months ago, they had slightly more active clients. I think you'll be able to see my mouse there. And then going back 3 months ago, they had more. And 4 months ago, they had more. And about 6 months ago, they peaked. Versus practice B, where they had just under 4,000 active clients 12 months ago, and then coming to now, they're just sitting on 4,000 active clients. So if you want to put something in the chat box now, if you were owning either of these practices, which one do you think has got a problem with active clients? And it's quite a simple question, but just write it in the chat. Practice A or practice B? Which one would you rather be when looking at active clients? Okay, so practice A has got the problem, right? Thank you, Sandy. So practice A has got the problem. Yes, okay. Everyone's saying practice A has definitely got a problem. And the reason why we can identify this problem is in spite of the fact that they've probably got enough active clients, and I'll show you something, the next slide will show you why I know they've still got enough active clients. We have a trend and we're measuring a trend. And that trend shows us that they peaked with active clients about 6 months ago, and then suddenly the active clients started dropping. Whereas with practice B, we can see they've just got a steady increase in active clients. No, this is pre-COVID data, right? So, so this has got nothing to do with COVID here. But if you're looking at practice A, you guys can write in the chat box, what do you think could cause a decrease in active clients? See what you guys can write in there. Is there anything you guys can think? A vaccine reminder issue. Mike, thank you very much. You've been around a while. Seasonal, okay. Seasonality, no. I will actually say no to seasonal, and I'll explain to you why. Losing a key vet, okay. And actually, that practice as a case study did lose a key vet, all right. New clinic opened up near them. Competition, right. These are all things we would worry about, okay, and something we would have to investigate in this particular practice. So we'll show you what we did later down the track, because we'll work through this all as a case study and look at the 5 most important KPIs for each of these practices. Okay, so that's our case study, practice A and practice B. Looking at the next slide, and what we'd like to also look at, when I said to you before that practice A is losing clients, but do they still have enough clients to maintain profitability? And that's that second one. Actually, the green line you actually could see in the chart, I'll flick back, is what we call active clients per full-time vet equivalent. So your active clients per full-time vet equivalent essentially is the number of clients you have per physical veterinary body in the practice. And a full-time vet equivalent is actually a vet that's working 38 to 40-hour week. So, so if someone's working, say, an 18-hour week, 18 to 20-hour week, we'd say they're half a full-time vet equivalent. And the reason we can measure this in Profitdiagostix is we actually don't only connect to your practice management software, we connect to your accounting software also. So if you're on Xero or MyOb or QuickBooks, we'll connect your accounting data also. We'll pull in the payroll information and estimate what your full-time vet equivalents are. So now looking at practice A and practice B, and we're looking at the second column here now, all right, we can actually see that practice A has had between 12 months ago, 816 active clients per full-time vet equivalent, and now is sitting at 728 active clients per full-time vet equivalent. Whereas practice B, which was the practice of the growing client base, it's been sitting quite consistently in the high 500s, 587 active clients per full-time vet equivalent, and last month, 561 active clients per full-time vet equivalent. So now, again, in the chat box, just write, which practice would you rather be now when we're looking at active clients per full-time vet equivalent? Oh, Jenny's still saying practice A because she was... right, other people are saying practice B, right? So I would rather be, like, in terms of active clients per full-time vet equivalent, the question is, what is the right number of active clients per full-time vet equivalent? What's the sweet spot in veterinary industry. And this is something else we do a lot of in Profit Diagnostics, and we share quite extensively to the veterinary industry at large. But can any of you hazard a guess what is the right number or the average number of active clients per full-time vet equivalent within our client base, or generally within the veterinary industry in Australia, New Zealand, and actually the UK? All right, Jenny has said, and Jenny, we know who you are. Okay. Yeah, so we got James and Jenny saying 650, 600 to 700, around 600. Okay, so as of this year, because we've just aggregated the KPIs for this year, we just did that last week because we're going to get ready for our client workshops. The right number of active clients, or the average number, I won't say the right number, the average number of active clients per full-time vet equivalent is around 640 active clients per full-time vet equivalent. Okay, but I will tell you that we see profitable practices running in the low 500s, and we see profitable practices in the high 800s. Okay, so the variance between what the right number or what a profitable practice can do is very, very variable when it comes to active clients per full-time vet equivalent. If you have a practice that promotes a lot of high-value services and does a lot of dentistry and services their clients very, very effectively, then you can run with a much lower number of active clients per full-time vet equivalent. If you have a practice that has a high number of active clients, you actually can't do that level of servicing. We call them high-throughput practices. And we don't feel there's a correct, a right and wrong model because we see equal number of practices on both ends of that. But certainly when you start falling below the 500 active clients per full-time vet equivalent, we start seeing that as a slight risk. Okay, so looking at that, that's your active clients per full-time vet equivalent. That's the best way to match your resourcing to your client number. Okay, so an absolute number means nothing, but a trend means something. How we work these out, I'll tell you now, so that, and this is being recorded, right? Because people do accuse me of speaking too quickly and say, hey, like a lot of information, but you know, I can't remember it all. Kimberly has said she's recording this. If we're looking at your number of active clients, you'll actually see that your EasyVet reports will actually pull that out for you. And by definition, in our terms, an active client is any client who has been invoiced a positive dollar in the last 12 months. Now, I'm not saying that that definition is correct. That's what we like to use in Profit Diagnostics and APL accountants. And at least I know that if for practice A and practice B, whether they're sitting on, like practice A is on EasyVet and practice B is on something else like RxWorks, I know that the data is consistent and correct and I'm comparing apples with apples, right? But a lot of these practice management systems, not all of them do report correctly on active clients. So that's quite easy to pull out. Certainly if you're on EasyVet, you'll get, we know what the reports we get in Profit Diagnostics versus the printed out report from EasyVet for active client numbers is very, very close. So that's how you get your number of active clients. From your full-time vet equivalent perspective, if you're doing it manually, not using the accounting software, you just have to estimate the number of full-time vets you've got based on what your roster is. So for each 40 hours of veterinary work you've got in the practice each week, then that would be a full-time vet equivalent. And then you simply divide your number of active clients by your number of full-time vet equivalents, and that would be your active clients per full-time vet equivalent. Okay, so you can actually manually calculate that yourself. If you're going to do a trend, you'd have to do 12 different reports. So it would take you a bit of time, but it is actually totally doable. All right, so we know what's been happening with, well, I was going to ask Mike at this point what's been happening with active clients, but he already answered that earlier, and we actually had that on the poll anyway, that we felt that active clients have been increasing. So Mike answered something there. Again, in the chat box, because this is a question and answer, can you guys just say, why do you think active clients has been increasing in the veterinary industry? Why do you think you're actually getting more clients? And just have a stab in the dark. And I'll tell you while you're doing that why I think it's happening. Anyone going to say anything in the chat? Oh, no one's brave enough. Okay. Okay, well, people at home looking at animals. People at home, yeah. People at home don't notice, yeah. More time at home, owners looking at their pets, yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of things we've looked at this, and that's all the right gist of things. Things have changed now because so many people are working from home. They're either getting another pet or they're sitting with their pet and able to take the pet to the vet. And Mike, you might actually remember from our client workshop about 2 years ago, where we actually had a whole session on, we actually felt the veterinary industry was losing a lot of money because consumption or consumers were simply not buying. You weren't losing to a competitor. You weren't losing to anyone. You were losing to inconvenience. So put yourself now in an accountant's shoes, like I am. Okay, well, I'm quite lucky because our office and home is very, very close together. But for most people, if you work in the city and your dog has to go to the vet, you have to stop your work in the city, drive 40 minutes back home, pick up your pet, drive 10 minutes to the vet, drive 10 minutes back home, drop your pet off, and drive back to the city. The only way you can conceivably manage that is if you work from home, or if you take a full day off work, right? As opposed to going to the dentist, where if I work in the city, I have a dentist close to my workplace, and I simply drive 5 minutes to the dentist. So there's a lot of evidence to indicate that consumption simply does not occur in the veterinary industry. When people would normally take a dog with, say, diarrhea to the vet, they just don't bother and they wait for it to get better on its own, because by the time they get around to taking a day off work, it just simply doesn't happen. Now, that's not happening at the moment because people are working from home. It's easy for them to take their pet to the vet. Okay, so what do we think is going to happen in the next 12 months? Is this going to change in the next 12 months? What do you guys think? Is it going to change? Just yes or no? In the chat box. What do you think? Yes. So we have a yes. Depends on virus restrictions. No. Depends on whether economy tanks. Thanks, Katie. That's something else I'm going to decide. Right. Okay. Financial hardship. Okay. We'll discuss all the financial hardship stuff's all coming down. Okay. My opinion is it's not going to change in a hurry, and I'll tell you why. Last week we received a survey. I'm fortunate that I actually get input from the accounting industry and the veterinary industry, and then indirectly from our partner firm in Melbourne. They actually deal with all types of businesses, so we kind of get an idea of what's happening in other businesses too. But the accounting industry actually sent out a poll to all their accountants, and as to whether or not they would like to continue and intended to continue working from home post-COVID. 65% of accountants answered yes. Okay. Again, looking at our own office now, we have an office here and our bookkeepers were working in our offices pre-COVID. We knew in theory with what we do, they could work from home, but we'd never tested it. And why fix it if it's not broken? Because we were happy with the way work was going with everyone working in the office. Then we were forced to have everyone working from home, and I think they're happier working from home. And the question is, are we going to have them back at the office? We don't know yet. You know, it's not something we definitely think is a necessity for them to come back in the office. So I think long term, there's going to be more people working from home, and I think it's going to be great for the veterinary industry. Because one of the biggest issues around veterinary science was the issue that consumption was never occurring. All right, so that's done the first KPI there. We've looked at active clients. We've looked at active clients for full-time vet equivalent. We were talking, someone said their financial hardship. So we're going to talk about the second most important KPI that I think is really important in veterinary practice, particularly in this kind of environment. Again, it's what we call the business health check. It's visible on the business health check in Profitdiagonostix, but you can get this out of your own practice management software, and I'll tell you how to calculate it. And this is Practice A and Practice B again. So I'll do it by virtue of a case study and show you what their average client spend is, or annual client spend. And we'll also look at their average invoice value, because I like to look at those two things together because they pretty much indicate the same thing. Right, and we can see in Practice A, it's a busy little slide, but I've actually highlighted in red the important ones. In Practice A, their annual client spend inclusive of GST is $787. And in Practice B, the practice that was growing, their annual client spend is $658. Right, remember this data has only been randomized by 3%. So the figures are pretty realistic. Their average invoice value reflects a pretty similar thing. Practice A has got an average invoice value of $201, and Practice B has an average invoice value of $154. So the first question I would ask myself there is, okay, what is what should an annual client spend be? How much does each client on average spend in a veterinary practice in Australia, inclusive of GST? So put it in the chat box, see if you guys can guess. What should it be? How much does a client on average spend? 180 to 200? No, too low, James. James is saying average, meaning in average invoice value. Jim said, so yeah, 800. Jenny said 800 for average client spend. Okay, so inclusive of GST, roughly speaking, average client spend is around $800. So we can see Practice A for 2018 figures, actually 2 years ago, 787, 790 was actually bang on the money. Average client spend is bang on the money. And then the other practice B is at 658. So we can see there's a huge shortfall in annual client spend in practice B. And when we look at average invoice value, practice A has an average invoice value of $201. In 2018, average invoice value was around $150. And so their average invoice value is quite high, actually. And practice B was actually sitting bang on the money for average invoice value. So their average invoice value was about $154. So I'll tell you how we calculate these if you want to do it yourself. When you look at annual client spend, the formula is pretty simple. Assuming you can get active clients out of your practice management software quite easily, which is the one I mentioned before, you can pull out a report. All you do is then you look at your revenue for an entire year in your accounting file, your Xero or your MARB file, or you pull your revenue out of your EasyVet reports, your revenue for the year, and you simply divide your total revenue by your number of active clients. And that's how you calculate annual client spend. Okay, so it's easy to do DIY if you want to DIY it, but you would then know sort of where do I sit ballpark figure. I much more prefer annual client spend as a KPI to measure the propensity of clients to spend or the volume of servicing that a practice is giving to their clients. Okay, again, I'll ask you guys in the chat box, why do you think a practice could have a low annual client spend? Just have a few goes. Just tell me, why do you think a practice could have a low annual client spend? Let's see what you guys put in the chat box. No repeat visits, missed fees, discounting, vets discounting. Yep, so that's the kind. Lots of clients, interesting, Katie, yeah. Poor reminder systems, yeah, so less revisits, missed charges, exactly, okay. So any of the things of like, if you miss charges, so you're doing stuff but you're not billing for it, if your prices are too low, if you're not servicing your clients well enough and you're not doing enough dentistry or high value services, all those things will lead to a low average client spend. Okay, what is the power of low average client spend? We can say there's $658, not that bad. This practice, if you remember, my first slide had nearly 4,000 active clients. So what is the opportunity cost? Knowing that this is real data, because I don't sell snake oil to anyone, knowing that this is real data randomized by 3%, what is the opportunity cost of that low average client spend to practice B? Have a stab in the dark. They've got 4,000 clients, and let's keep it a round number. Their spend shortfall is $100 a year. Nearly $500,000. Well, yeah, well, Zach, not quite, but close enough, right? So if we look at their shortfall, 3,963 was the actual number. Their spend shortfall was actually more than $100. It was actually more like $120. So it's $396,000. That is their spend shortfall and their revenue shortfall, just because their annual client spend is that low. And they didn't know this kind of stuff when we started working with them a while back. And checks and balances have been put in place. And again, no snake oil and no lies. We can tell people the data, we can tell them where the shortfall or the leaky buckets are in their business, but then you as the business owner still has to do something about it. Okay, so it all comes down to the level of implementation and how you can get your team to buy into this sort of thing. So with this particular practice, now looking at 2020, we've probably made up about half that shortfall. And still slowly things will be put into place that'll bring that shortfall up to normal. But small amounts, little bits at a time, and you can get huge improvements in the business. So understanding the power of average client spend in a positive way, someone mentioned something about a recession earlier on, okay? Remember that the reverse applies if a recession hits us, okay? And I think it would be naive to think we're not going to have a recession in, post-December when all the government bailouts stop paying out. I think we're going to see a lot of people lose their jobs and be short of cash. So just remember that in a recessionary environment, even a $20 or $30 drop in annual client spend can make a significant difference to the amount of money you take home. You'll have more clients, but they may actually be able to spend less. The only way we are going to know the extent of this is when we start tracking this. And if you start tracking this as a trend month by month, so you can actually see what's happening. And if you can see it start to drop, then you can start to think about what you're going to do about that. All right, so that's the second KPI, annual client spend. Okay, very, very important KPI. All right, the next thing we're going to speak about, KPI number 3, is what we call client-facing opportunities. And in this particular case, I'm showing you primary consults on the slide. Again, same case, practice A and practice B, still the same randomized data, 3% either way. But here, when we're looking at client-facing opportunities, if you guys write in the chat box, it's basically, when are you sit in the consult room examining a patient? Okay, when does that happen? It happens in 3 occasions in a veterinary practice. So let's have a look and see if you guys know that. Once primary consults, when else do you have a client-facing opportunity? Let's see. I'm known for just sitting here looking pretty until people answer, right? Revisits, okay, so Jenny said revisits, discharges, revisits, repeat consultations, vaccinations, and repeat consults, okay? So that's fantastic. And euthanasias, we also count those, but we actually count those in the primary consult sector. That's just the way we do it, just for simplicity's sake. So broadly speaking, we look at primary consults, repeat consults, and vaccinations, okay? So in this particular slide, for the purpose of this little web event, we're just looking at primary consults. Now, when we look at, there's a green line there, a nice level green line. So this again is in Profitdiagostix. A lot of our dashboards actually ship out with the national average for a practice that size. So for your understanding of this particular slide, the green line is where the average practice of this size would be in Australia and New Zealand, and incidentally in the UK, which is very, very similar. The KPIs are very, very similar. So again, immediately we can see a difference between practice A and practice B. Practice A was the practice that's got a high client spend. They're charging very well. They're not misbilling, but they had that active client chart, which was going up, and then in 6 months, it started to drop a little bit. And here we're looking at their primary consultations, and we can actually see that they have been slightly, like in the middle of the year, their consult volume actually went up to above average, and then their consult volume has started to dip down again and drop down again. So their number of client-facing events, and this was true for their vaccinations and repeat consults, by the way, is very, very accurately reflected by their drop in active clients. So their client number is dropping and their number of client-facing events is dropping. So we know that this is going to have an impact on the profitability of this particular practice. Because if your client base is dropping and the amount of times you're in the consult room with a pet is dropping, realistically, the ability for you to make money is restricted. It drops in proportion to that volume. Whereas practice B, we can see, has actually got a very, very high volume of primary consultations. In fact, significantly higher than average. Bear in mind, these two practices were kind of similar sort of sizes, right? One had, I think, about 3,900 active clients. The other one had around 4,000. So they're very similar sized practices. So they've got a very, very high number of primary consultations. So I'll ask you this question just to put quickly in the chat. Would you think that a practice that is doing this volume of primary consultations, like way above average, yet has a low average client spend, is that suspicious? Just say yes or no. Is that suspicious? Yeah, of course, it's hugely suspicious, right? If a practice is servicing their clients to that level and doing that volume of primary consultations, the clients are coming in, money is going missing somewhere, right? So we don't have a problem with clients visiting the practice. We can scratch that one from low average client spend. So where are the likely problems going to be? Yeah, the likely easy problems. I'd look primarily at two places. And this is the 2 places we focused on significantly at this practice. Well, there's a 3rd place we did look. But where would you look? Mischarges. Okay, mischarges is the first go-to place I would go to there. Mischarges, recommendations, discounting, okay? What was the pricing position of this practice? They're working way too hard for the amount of money they're making. And this is a big part of this practice's problems, okay? So we can see that disconnect between the volume of clients and the level of service and level of pricing, the amount of money that you were actually getting out of those clients. All right, I think in part we have actually answered this question with the poll before. I can't remember what was on the poll in the beginning, Kimberly. I've forgotten. I've got a goldfish brain. You know, what has been, yeah, so there we go. There's the poll results, right? So what has been happening to client-facing opportunities over the last 5 months? And 83% of you have said that they actually increased, which is consistent. And I'll show you the real data we have when we've extracted big data from all our veterinary practices. That there's strong evidence to show that the veterinary industry is getting a lot this year. What do we think is going to happen in the next 12 months with primary consultations? What do we actually think is going to happen? Say up or down? Just put in the chat box, up or down. What do you think? Are they going to go up? Someone's saying up, up, down, up. Slight reduction from now, but still up. Okay, Mike, yeah, okay. Up, Up, yeah, okay. So most people are saying up, and I would agree with that, okay, is that that I don't think the willingness of owners to bring their pets to the vet is going to go down. We're still going to be seeing these sick pets and things like that. So I don't think that's going to drop. Where do you think you're going to be getting more no's or people knocking backs? What do you think? Some ideas where people might be knocking back. Value add, big expenses, recommendations, specifically preventative stuff. Okay, so Liddy's pretty good, bang on the money there, preventative stuff. So this is the kind of stuff we're going to have to monitor going forwards. I don't think you're going to lose volume of client-facing events. I think you might face a situation in the next 12 months where you might be getting more no's in the consult room, particularly to stuff like dentistry, pre-GA blood testing, that kind of stuff. Again, we won't know for sure until we start to track and measure this. But my feeling is that you'll still have a high volume of work, but you might be getting the ability to extract quite that amount of money from each client around the $800 mark might drop a little bit. So one of the things I want to monitor on a big scale in the veterinary industry is average invoice value and annual client spend will certainly be one of the things we'll be monitoring going forward, certainly if we're hitting a recessionary environment, and then certainly the preventative kind of add-on services. Dentistry is a fantastic marker for that kind of thing, because sometimes what we feel is happening isn't what the numbers are showing, and I really like to have hard numbers backing everything up. All right, so then the next question is the next KPI we're going to go to. So we've just looked at client-facing events, right? Just by the way, I told you how we're going to measure these. The consultations, repeat consultations, and vaccinations, really, really easy to measure. You simply just pull out the volume of those things you've invoiced. You have reports that can pull out all that stuff in your practice management software. To do it as a trend, here we actually look at a 2-year trend, would take you a little bit of time, but you can get that information. It's basically what you've invoiced for those particular products. Okay, so that's fairly easy to measure. Right, the next important KPI we're going to look at is going to be wages. So now we're moving from the practice management software more into strictly financial stuff that we pull out of people's Xero file. Again, you can do this yourself if you want to take it out of your accounting file. It is something you can do yourself. And in this particular case, we're looking at wages as a percentage of turnover. Okay, so practice A was sitting at 32.8. Now, actually, with this particular data, it's exclusive of superannuation. So if we were to add super into this particular one, we'd be looking more at 35%. Practice B is sitting at 51% wages. Okay, so does this surprise you that practice B is so high? Okay, you know, no, it doesn't. Okay, no, because if we think back carefully, they had a low number of active clients per full-time vet equivalent. So they had a lot of full-time vet equivalents. If you remember, they were sitting in the 500s, which is kind of in the boutique space of practicing. Like when people are in the 500 active clients for full-time vet equivalents, they are a bit of a way under the prescribed 640. You can certainly run a very profitable practice, but your billing has to be bang on, your service promotion has to be bang on, and your prices have to reflect a boutique practice such that you are actually priced above average. And none of these things were happening at this practice. Therefore, they had a lot of vets which weren't generating enough money. Okay, where should this value be? Well, as of this year, we're actually measuring it inclusive of superannuation. So inclusive of superannuation, we want to see it at about 44%. Exclusive of superannuation, which is what these ones were actually showing here, is roughly 39%. So we can see practice A is actually using their team very, very effectively. They've got a high number of active clients per full-time vet equivalent. Their wages are low as a result. Their average invoice value was high. Their average client spend was bang on average. So they actually are managing to resource with quite a low number of resources. To me, my preference, my opinion would be that they're actually too high on active clients. I don't like practice to see practice go into the 800s. I think if you do go into the 800s, you start dropping the ball on service promotion, and I prefer to see them in the 700s. But certainly for them, it's working. The only problem they had was currently that dropping number of clients. That was their only problem, right? Whereas Practice B certainly has a problem in the ability of their team to promote services, in their ability of their team to bill accurately and do all those things. And these are the things we corrected in this practice, and it makes a big difference when you know what to measure. Now, one thing I will just highlight for you guys, if you are going to do this yourself, we do this automatically in Profitdiagostix, but when we look at wages in a business, we have to adjust the wages you see in your accounting file to include a commercial owner's wage. Okay, so for example, if a practice's wages, total wages, are $500,000 a year, but the business owner works there for 40 hours a week and doesn't take a wage out of the practice through payroll, then that wage doesn't actually appear in their profit and loss statement, so you don't count it. And you'd actually have to add $100,000 to wages to adjust for that owner's commercial wage. Okay. If, on the other hand, that owner actually took $200,000 through payroll, worked a 40-hour week, we'd assume a commercial wage for them was about $100,000, so they've overpaid themselves by about $100,000, and that means we would have to subtract that, okay, from wages. So just be mindful that business owners very rarely pay themselves a commercial wage one way or the other for various tax reasons, so you'd have to adjust for commercial wages, okay? But here immediately we can see a huge disparity between Practice A and B, and no doubt when you look at this, other than the slight declining client base for Practice A, they're certainly a more profitable practice than Practice B, okay? Certainly when you look at discrepancy here, just in pure percentage between wages, you can see the wages of Practice B is basically eating away all their profit margins. In fact, any practice with wages over 50% very, very rarely runs at a significant profit. Okay, so this is what we actually fixed for these particular practices. This is what we actually looked at. So when we look at Practice A, the main problem was actually reducing client base. The client numbers per vet were still adequate. It wasn't a problem there. They still had enough work coming through to generate profitably, and the client reduction only started in the last 6 months. So what we did for this particular practice was we investigated, they had a senior vet leave, but the only way we could do it was we actually generated a report of all their lost clients, so clients that were active more than a year ago that weren't active anymore, they lost clients, and they actually did some callbacks and investigated where their client numbers and actually asked the clients why they weren't coming in. And the actual truth behind this business was the problem was roadworks. Okay, there'd been some major city roadworks around them, and accessibility to the practice had been very, very severely hampered by the roadworks. So they were only losing clients as a result of roadworks. Actually, it was nothing else. Okay, and when those roadworks were sorted out, they actually toyed with the idea and actually did more house collections and house visits, which was a big hassle for them. But then once that roadworks was resolved and finished, their client numbers went up again. Okay, so that practice actually didn't have a client-based problem. It was actually a roadworks problem. It's funny how these things, you don't know until you phone a couple of clients and asked, all right? And you have to know who your lost clients are to do that, and we can assist with that. I think EasyVet might actually even have a report that does that internally, but you have to follow up those lost clients. The other practice, Practice B on the other hand, had a mismatch between staffing and level of service promotion. They had to really decide whether they wanted to be a boutique practice or whether they wanted to be a high throughput practice. To be a high throughput practice, they would have had to get rid of staff, but they actually took, and I think the correct option of, we've got an actively growing client base. Our practice will continue to grow if we keep the existing staff we've got, train them really, really well, work on the missed billing, increase our pricing, et cetera, et cetera. In 2 years' time, we'll actually be a high net profit margin practice. And that's what they're working towards now. Okay, but what advice now? Okay, so we've done the case study, so you kind of get the KPIs. What sort of advice do we give to practices now, knowing that primary consult volume's gone up, number of active clients has gone up, there's the potential for client spend to reduce. What do we look at this point in time going forward for the next 12 months to protect the veterinary industry against a possible recession? All right, and sort of what ideas have you guys got? Right, so Jenny's saying insurance is one, right? So you can get people to take up pet insurance. Certainly you can, because there will be, I think for the first time ever, you'll find professional people, doctors, dentists, GPs have been really hard hit by this. People just aren't going to GPs anymore. You might find you've got professional clients who were A-type clients who simply can't afford your bill. Nailing reminders. Nailing reminders, Zach, I would say you need to nail reminders all the time, right? I think there's no reason why you shouldn't be nailing reminders. Actually, that's one of the things I like about EasyVet. It's got a good automated reminder system, works really, really well. If you guys actually sit with EasyVet and work on your reminder systems and nail those reminders, there's no reason at any point in time why you shouldn't be nailing reminders, okay? But this is kind of the kind of, okay, what I'll actually do now is I'll move my slides around. I'll show you what's actually happened in the veterinary industry based on our big data collection that we've done in the last few weeks, all right? So this, we ran around, we chose 200 veterinary practices on Profitdiagostix that had actively engaged APL accountants. So we have a relationship with them, we know how the practices run, and we have a relationship with them where we know we can aggregate data. And this is what it actually, this is the actual hard numbers of what happened in the veterinary profession over the last 12 months. And in the curly brackets there, and no one's seen this before. Mike, you won't have seen this before. No one who deals with us will have seen this before. In the curly brackets there is what was pre-COVID, right? And we at APL Accounts already have a pretty actively growing client base, all right? So the practices who use our services, the practices who use Profitdiagostix are probably that segmentation of veterinary business owners who are actually driving their practices quite hard. So you can see already when pre-COVID, the base growth in revenue. So this is, we're actually looking at the revenue figure. So the middle column there, revenue. If I average it out in pre-April, the growth was at about 7.7%. If I average it out in post-COVID, so April onwards, the growth was 13.8%. All right, so the net change in growth from our already reasonably growing businesses was 6.1%. All right, so our client base has been growing in terms of revenue by 6.1%. If you guys look at the primary consult side, though, you'll actually appreciate that the primary consults are actually more sensitive than revenue. Primary consult numbers have, and we've been monitoring this all the time, because one of the things we were worried about was were people still going to be visiting the vet over COVID? And they do. In fact, they're doing more of it, okay? So the revenue's gone up a certain amount. Primary consults has gone up even more. What I don't have here is profitability, but we've just aggregated and normalized all our clients' data for our client workshops. And actually, the average profitability of a veterinary practice has gone up by a couple of %, all right? So why do you guys think that revenue's only gone up by 13.8%, profitability's only gone up by, say, 2%, and primary consults has actually increased by more than 13.8%? Why do you think all of that hasn't translated into profit? Anyone hazard a guess why they think, like, you've got a lot of revenue there, an increase in revenue. Why has that not all translated into profit? Why has not those increased number of consults translated into profit? Right, staff costs, staff costs, extra staff. Okay, everything takes more time, okay? 100%, okay? We don't have a single client who hasn't been bitching about how busy they are, right? Because in some areas now, you've got to practice social distancing. You've divided your teams into two. Your team are working overtime because they're working longer shifts to try and keep your team separate. Some of you, particularly now in Melbourne, are going to be forced to leave the customer in the car and collect the dog from the car. So everything's happening slower. People are working longer hours, and their staff are going to cost them more. Your human resources are going to cost you more, right? So there's no doubt that that your efficiencies have been affected. Okay, so this is one of the things. So this is like I'm leading up to how you guys get yourselves ready for this going forwards, because I don't think it's going to be over in a hurry. Okay, like we'd love to think that this is all going to be over by the end of the year. I don't think it's going to be over by the end of the year. Okay, practice are doing well. Revenue growth up, profit not quite as high because of inefficiencies. And incidentally, that's why wages was one of my most important KPIs also, because you've got to monitor what's happening with your cost of human resources. Because if those spiral out of control, in spite of an increased revenue, particularly in an environment where there might be a reduction in client spend, might tip your balance into a less profitable business. So again, before we just look at the data we aggregated from Profitdiagostix. I'm actually fortunate. I'm actually on this mailing list from Ilian, who actually survey what 250,000 consumers in Australia spend on their credit cards. Okay, these people agree to have their credit cards monitored for, I don't know, whatever payback they get for it. So this actually, we're measuring it from the business side. These people are actually measuring it from the consumer side. And this was their one for, starting to this was what started in April. So starting in April, they were quite concerned about what was going to happen. And you can actually see the reflection of this. Obviously, in the early start, gyms were 96% down, and food delivery was 59% up. And veterinary services, well, not veterinary, pet care, okay, not veterinary, important, pet care. So in other words, pet shops, anything to do with buying pet products was up by about 6%. So their data married up very, very closely to what we were seeing. So we're measuring it from two different ways, two different methodologies of measuring an industry. Gives us some confidence that what we're feeling as an advisory firm to vets is actually accurate because it's actually being reported independently, by another group. All right. And incidentally, I actually didn't have a chance to put this on the slide, Kim. Ilian sent me the survey again this morning. I got it this morning, and I just took a quick snippy of it, and I'll bring it up to you now. What it's been in the last week. Okay. And what do you guys think it's been in the last week?
Well, Chris mentioned why is alcohol only up 19%?
Yeah, well, it's changed a bit now. If we look at things in the last week, and I'll have to change my share because I didn't have time. I didn't even have time. I was looking at my emails before I went into this web event, and I thought, well, what's the chances of that, right? And I'll just put you the share now. Let's see if I can change this share, new share. And this is absolutely amazing. See if that one comes up. All right. Pet care, 39%. Okay. So remember I said to you guys, it's not only about a single value, it's about a trend. So in the start of COVID, pet services were up by 6% in revenue. And now currently they're up by 39%. And food deliveries at 342%. So where's Chris's alcohol? I don't even know where that is, but okay. So that's
38%. There you go, 39%. No wait.
So we're just above alcohol, Chris. Which you'll be happy, 1% above alcohol. All right. But I'll say we, but that's not we. Okay. This is not what we're seeing in the veterinary industry, and this is again the area where I'm saying consumption is not occurring again. A lot of that spending is going to other pet services. It's going to pet shops. It's going to buying pet products. It's going to buying pet food. So there's a couple of ways I'm thinking, because I've only had like half an hour to think about this, right? There's a couple of ways I'm thinking about this now. One of the things is that there is actually a puppy boom. A lot of people are just getting another pet, okay? And initially they'll have to buy stuff for that pet. They'll have to get a whole lot of stuff for that pet, but that will eventually translate into veterinary services. So if that theory of mine is correct, it's quite possible you're going to get even busier in the next 12 months in terms of client volume, not necessarily client spend, okay? So that's very, very possible. The other way of looking at it, though, is that consumption is simply not occurring in the veterinary industry because you guys are struggling to run it efficiently enough with the current social distancing rules, and revenue and generation is not actually happening in the veterinary industry because, if you're selling pet products, it still happens. It still happens online. There's not a big process involved. Whereas if you're running a consult, you're struggling to maintain the efficiencies around that particular thing. All right, so that's kind of my theory on that. So really, what are we going to do? And I have to go back to my slideshow. If you give me a second, I'll just share my slides again. There we go. I think that's all there. Right, so we're back to my original slide there. So this is how it was in the beginning of April. So big change in revenue. And actually, guys, no one else has seen that information yet. Like, that's just brand new and fresh off the mark. Okay, so this is how we're going to focus our workshop. So spoiler alert to you guys, so clients, but we're going to be looking at efficiencies in veterinary practice, because I think that's a win-win situation when we look at going forwards in the next 12 months. If nothing happens, you have a more efficient business. If we end up with a high volume of clients with lower client spend, then you're going to be more efficient and you'll be able to maintain your profitabilities with a higher throughput business. Okay. For those of you who know me quite well, it says a better, faster, cheaper, which is actually the Amazon mantra that was always, there's books about it and stuff. This was Amazon's mantra, better, faster, cheaper. We're not calling our workshops better, faster, cheaper. There's a word in there that I don't like. Can any of you guess in the chat which is the word I don't like in that one? Mark, I can see Mark's face here. He's laughing. Oh, everyone, cheaper. Cheap. Okay, you guys have got it right. So, so we're doing better, faster, leaner. Okay, because cheaper is not good. You're looking at cheaper if you're selling a commodity. So like Amazon, if you're selling books, that kind of stuff. then cheap is good. But if you're selling a professional service, I don't think cheap is good. Okay, so we're definitely not. Oh, someone said that unless accounting fees are cheaper. James, I can guarantee you they won't be. All right, because I don't like cheaper, right? It has to be better, faster, leaner. And leaner does that mean you have to get rid of stuff? No. If what's going to happen is your volume of active clients is going to go up, then basically it means you continue operating with your existing staff and put things in place to make you work more efficiently. Okay, Profitdiagostix is an example that helps you do that. But there's a couple. You guys can put something in the chat box. You guys can guess something. What'll make you work more efficiently? Katie said there will be leaner. Leveraging support staff. Good idea. Leveraging support staff is one. Leveraging the nursing team. Automations. Zach said automations. Okay, so what can you automate? Like one of the classic automations I love, and not everyone's implementing, is stuff like online appointment scheduling, right? Have you guys thought about getting involved with telemedicine? And it's not only about technology. What about training your vets to be more effective and efficient in the consult room? That's why we're going to have Alison Lambert dealing with that at our workshops, because those are the key areas. Like efficiency and time management in veterinary practices is extremely bad. And if you actually run reports, and we do, is actually run reports on each individual vet from a financial perspective in a veterinary practice, you can see there's a huge disparity in the efficiency of various individuals, and training and thought has to be given towards time management of your team. So these are all things you can do, but think, better, faster, leaner, and that will be our mantra for the next 12 months for sure. And that will be, I think, the way to bulletproof your practice for what's to come. I actually think there's good things to come for the veterinary industry. We're going to a more traditional household now. People have been commuting too much to a rat race, and actually, the more people sit at home with their children and their pets, it actually inadvertently, like I know people don't like the change, but ultimately, I think will lead to an appreciation of those things a lot more. So I don't think it's all bad for us, to be honest.
Paolo, in a nutshell, what were the 5 KPIs and metrics to look out for? The 5.
Okay, now I've got to remember them, right?
Yeah.
So your first one is going to be your active client number. And as a trend, I think that's really, really important. Then your active clients per full-time vet equivalent. So you can match your resourcing to your client number. And certainly, as I say, in this COVID type area, if you're starting to notice a drop in client spend, if you're running on 550 active clients per full-time vet equivalent, you might find yourself running at 600 active clients per full-time vet equivalent. And you might want to leave it at that before recruiting another vet, particularly if you can measure if your annual client spend is dropping. If your annual client spend is not dropping, it doesn't matter. Okay, so active clients per full-time vet equivalent, annual client spend, client-facing events, and wages as a percentage of revenue. Those are the things. Those are the key elements. So that's our veterinary 101. And you'll find most practices will have a leaky bucket somewhere. That's what I call veterinary 101. If you find a leaky bucket in any of those areas, that's the first place you're going to be fixing. And then you can start looking at do more funky stuff once those things are correct. But those are the things I would look at fixing.
Oh, great. Yeah, I think this is a good segue into, some of the questions I want to ask Mike about how he's used Profitdiagostix and EasyVet collectively. Basically, the 5 KPIs you've just run off, Mike. Do you track all of that? Is that all trackable on Profitdiagostix? Do you actually, what do you do with the reporting from that?
Yeah, so one of the really great things, Paolo said that these are all, manually, obtainable pieces of data from your practice management software, and that sounds great. And it's massively time consuming, incredibly to do that. Finding the time to do it in a timely manner so that you actually do it, I think that's why Profitdiagostix is a no-brainer in terms of, allowing that data to flow out to you. So that's that's a huge thing about Profitdiagostix, is that you're not paying someone to sit there and pull this information out, or heaven forbid doing it yourself. That it's just coming out. And so how I use it, Kim, is that there's some reports that we get weekly, and then there's some reports that we get monthly, and then there's others that we get quarterly. at any stage you can log on to a website basically and bring up last week's a different report, or some specific report. But at the moment we're getting I'll have the average transaction fee, the primary consult number coming to me on a weekly basis, and I'll have the active client number and as it compares to the full-time vet equivalent, and the client spend over the last 12 months, and the wages as a percentage of my revenue that'll come to me monthly.
Okay.
So I mean, amongst a lot of other data, basically.
Is it automated, like you get an email or?
Yeah, you get an email, exactly. Yep, that's right. And so does my practice manager, so that we can kind of have a discussion about it on it comes out on Monday, we look at it, and then we have a meeting on Tuesday morning and go, oh, that's interesting. What does that trend mean for us? Or, strategically, what do we do about that, basically? Yeah.
Was there anything interesting that these reports have shown you over the past year? You could say 6 months or a year, but was there anything that jumps to mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, a sort of an obvious thing for us, there's lots of data, but probably the obvious thing for us was that because of the way we moved right at the start of COVID, our vaccination numbers went down, and therefore so did our active client number went down slightly. Because if you're going back to what Paolo was talking about, the 12 months, if they haven't been there in the last 12 months, they're no longer an active client. So if your only dog or your two dogs get vaccinated in April normally, and then in April we say, oh, we can't vaccinate your dog, then immediately it's going to go book. You're going to lose some clients that you wouldn't have otherwise lost. So we saw a little dip, but then back up because of the vaccine. But you can track the vaccination number as well as the primary consult number, so you can see our primary consults were going up, which is like a sick animal, and a vaccination number just went down slightly, so it sort of balanced out. So yeah, you see lots of trends. As always with trends, the question is, you can probably justify them, but are you justifying them for the right way? And so that's the question. That was the question. The point that Paolo brought up earlier was, Clinic A in his example might have been seeing a downward trend in their active clients and thinking, oh, they don't like us anymore, or something, and then actually our vaccination reminders aren't working or something like that, but until you ask them, until you actually work out, you can have it allows you to form a theory, but you just got to make sure your theory's right. And then the other beauty of obviously tracking something very consistently is that you make a change and it doesn't change, then you got it wrong, basically. Does that make sense? Or it does, if you, if you are measuring something and you make a change that you would expect to have a change there, and it doesn't change, then you probably were, then you were off the mark. You've done it for the wrong reason or whatever. So yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. It's keeping your
What's
finger.
an example of something that you've looked or hoped that would change but didn't? Was there anything off the top of your mind?
I think not. Probably not, which is fortunate. But I guess that's that's an advantage of having other people to bounce ideas off as well. You gain information, then you talk to people within your business or your clients or Paolo, and go, what do you think about this? And you can. You'll often, in some ways, too much. There can be too much information to come out of it, and you can, get your wheels spinning. But the beauty of it is you pay attention, you talk about it, you get an idea, then you move, and it becomes a well-informed idea. And again, your well-informed idea, you try something, and then you actually can kind of look and go, oh, look at that. That actually did move us in the right direction.
In terms of
the wages.
Sorry, I had a question that led from looking at comparing and benchmarking. Are you able to see tell me a bit about how the the industry benchmarking works within the reporting itself and the platform? Can you compare yourself against the standard? How does that work?
So that's with all of the things there, well, not all of them, but with a lot of them, there's the trend that Paolo showed. It might be a 12-month trend or a 24-month trend. So it might be a monthly thing or it might be a weekly thing, but you'll see a length of trend. And I think the trends are the most important things, because, you're not going to make a big change of, if you didn't vaccinate as many dogs in a week, or, vaccinate as many pets in a week, that's not that relevant. But if you've been vaccinating less pets every month for the last 6 months, then that's super relevant. But the little green line, the little flat line that Paolo showed you, that can either be set as an industry average, or you can set it as a top performers average, or you can just kind of have at the start of your year said, I'm going to try, our numbers are this, and we're going to put in place a strategy, and we think with that strategy our target should be this. So you can just actually actively put in your own target. So it doesn't have to be an industry average target or an industry excellence target. It can be your own target. And so that's a great thing, because you can generate, you can sort of almost put together your own reports as you want to see them, when you want to see them, basically. Yeah, which is a great. Do
you use it at all to track staff performance on an individual level? Do you use it that way?
We do, yes. Yes, it's certainly capable of doing that in an extreme way, and really nicely. Like, we're talking about a lot of very financial stuff at the moment. However, the real advantage on tracking on veterinary performance, Zach I saw Zach's online. He's done it with us before. So we can sort of say, per. You can see per client-facing opportunity. So remember, that's a primary consult or a vaccination or a repeat consult. Per one of those, how many dental procedures did you recommend? How many did Mike recommend, and how many did Zach recommend? And we can compare that with each other. And then if Zach's doing noticeably better than Mike, I'm going to say, Zach, tell me how. What are you doing that I'm not? What is it about what you're doing that I'm not doing? And it might be that Zach believes more in dentistry. It might be he's a better dentist, and so therefore he feels more confident recommending it, or he sees the value of it more, or he's he just simply goes and books them in, whereas I'm not doing that. I'm kind of leaving them to their own devices. So yeah, it allows you, so there's that, it'll compare you against dentistry, it'll compare you against cytology, we can compare you against x-rays, recommend, all these procedures recommended. So that's that's that sort of patient advocacy, really, which I think is at the core of what.
Do you use it for, tracking your support and nursing staff as well?
So we don't. I'm not sure how much their capacity there is, but I do think that that one of the powerful things about what we've already talked about is that wages as a percentage of turnover.
Right.
So from our perspective, that's often the one that I will see as the, how are our nursing staff going, how are our reception and nursing staff going. Often when that number goes up, we've got too many people around, and when that number goes down, they're going to be feeling under the pump. And so I do think that there's a sweet spot, and I looked at that. Practices A's number, I think, was 32.9 or something like that as a percentage of income. And in our practice, if our wages was that low as a percentage, we would have a lot of people under a lot of pressure, basically, because that's a busy practice. But then again, practice B's 51 or whatever it was, that was like in scary territory, because that would be, in our case, that'll be a lot of people standing around not doing much, or at least not billing much, maybe.
Yeah. Fair enough. And you mentioned before to me before this webinar that you saw a bit of, or a lot of difference from when you moved on to a server-based software. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what the difference you could see on Profitdiagostix was of moving to cloud-based?
Yeah, that's right. I think that, certainly, for those of you who haven't been here at the start, I'm up. I'm currently up skiing at the moment, and I wouldn't be here if we weren't on a cloud-based software program. Let's just say that for to start with. So the freedom. Getting it right, Mount Perisher. Yeah. So later today, I'll put the wages up. No, I'm just kidding. I mean the prices up and the wages up, and we can do it all. We can do it all remotely. You know, which is pretty nice. So yeah, and there's no doubt that EasyVet there is some good reporting in EasyVet. And so, you know, I'm sure that in the back of EasyVet, you know, if you're not using Profitdiagostix, there's some good stuff that will help you to pull out that information reasonably easily. But again, there is a manualness to it to a degree that obviously I think Profitdiagostix kind of takes that out of it for you and allows you to put all the things you want to see in one little spot, I guess. So that's the beauty of what Profitdiagnostic adds. And then but I mean the move to the cloud-based software has been just life-changing and actually I've just been in the process of hiring a new vet, Kim, and in fact we ended up hiring two, and actually having proper cloud-based veterinary software, like when we mentioned that, they were like, oh wow, I've never had that before. But you know, the ability for them to, you know, to a degree work remotely, you know, to genuinely work remotely, that actually, you know, that actually made
them
fantastic. Actually, you know, it's almost a recruiting tool in a way as well. So
no, that's cool. And did you have data to work with from the server-based software? Like, did you move it into Profitdiagnostic so you can compare? You know, from when you had it.
Yeah. So it was. Yeah, it was you're touching on a soft point now, Kim. But the challenge was when we went from one software program to another that shall not be named. We had a big issue, and we kind of lost access to our back data properly. Fortunately, because we had Profitdiagostix, we had a history, so we actually did have a history we could compare to. So in the changeover, that was seriously awesome, because it was Paolo had already, that the Profitdiagnostic had already taken the information, and so we could look back at our old information, even though we couldn't even do a report out of our old practice management software anymore because we just didn't have access to it. But there was some stuff that where it was impossible to kind of track, so we lost a bit of stuff particularly from the veterinary, like the patient advocacy stuff. We lost a little bit of that comparing A with B. But in the changeover, there were reports that were coming out of EasyVet, and the only issue was that we didn't have those exact same reports to compare ourselves with, 6 months before, because we didn't have access to that information, basically.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, this brings me to my last question about, if someone was like unsure about giving Profitdiagostix a go, what would you say to them, and about especially the ROI on this piece?
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly, I think, I would assume the vast majority of people on this call are scientists in one way or another, if not veterinary scientists, believers in the ability of data to get, tell you what's going on and to tell you whether your strategies are having results, basically. And I think that, as soon as you get yourself into a place where you have the time or headspace or want to be paying attention, then you should be paying attention to as much as you can be, with a slight limit of, like, don't get the data. Certainly, Profitdiagostix for me is the way that makes that super easy and effectively being able to measure what your results, I guess.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing with that. I'll have a look through the Q&A sessions. I think it's more about everyone being jealous about you skiing, though, Mike.
I know, I just thought I'd show you the view out the window. That's all, just to shut Kate up. That one's for you, Kate. That one's for you.
Oh, thanks for that, Mike. Paolo, you've been keeping an eye on the some of the questions, I think.
Yeah, I have. I've been keeping an eye on the questions and stuff. I just stood out. I didn't really want to stand over Mark while he was saying stuff about profit diagnostics. I wanted him to have like the opportunity to give all the honest answers as possible. Just to clarify some of the stuff, people asked what kind of stuff, or you asked him what kind of stuff we find people do something and then measure an effect, and then they can identify whether or not there's been an improvement in that thing. The two classic places we see that happening in is pricing and dentistry. So for example, a practice might put in a whole training program for their team with regards to, how to get more dentistry in a practice, and spend a whole lot of money on that. And then we can track going forwards, because then we would expect the dentistry to say increase by a certain volume, say about 30%. And if that doesn't happen post that particular training event or whatever they've done, then we know whatever they've done hasn't worked. So historically, people would go on for an entire year and wait and say, okay, well, after a year, we didn't do any more dentistry. That's 12 months under the bridge, and we obviously did the wrong thing. Now we know within about 2 months, and we can say to the business owner, okay, however you applied that training didn't work. So you probably want to apply it in a slightly different way. Otherwise, you're just going to carry on doing the same thing and getting no results. The other really cool place is pricing. This is something we actually found like more recently in the last 12 to 18 months. We have this thing where practices, we do a price benchmarking on what is your consulting fee as an accounting firm, what is your x-ray fee, we'd mark the important fees in the veterinary practice, and we'd see a certain practice was undercharging for certain things like repeat consults, primary consults, vaccinations, all that stuff. So we'd say, okay, increase your prices, okay, and they'd increase their prices by 10%. And when that happens, like you'd expect to see an increase in revenue and an increase in average invoice value, and then you'd measure that and it wouldn't happen, okay? And all that was happening was that that the team who maybe had a bit of price confront saw the prices were going up and they were just discounting stuff so it was matching the same amount. So we actually have a new way of measuring pricing now through Profitdiagonostix, which we call intelligent price benchmarking, where my theory is, it actually doesn't matter what your consult fee is and what your x-ray fee is. What's really important is if a patient comes in for an x-ray procedure, when they walk out the door, what's the total value of that invoice? Was the hospitalization fee charged? Was the sedative charged? Were the radiographs charged appropriately, etc.? And that's actually a much better way of us monitoring it and checking whether or not there's been a result as a result of, say, price increases, or a result as a result of someone putting in templated billing to address misbilling in the practice. Then we'd want to see those particular things improving, average invoice value improving, and average client spend improving. So those things we can track and measure. And if it doesn't work with, like, say, you've implemented templated billing and your average invoice value doesn't go up and your average client spend doesn't go up, well, then it hasn't worked. Whatever you've done hasn't worked. You have to either train your team better to do it better, or you have to implement a different way of doing that particular process.
Chris had a question about how you deal with fixed-term employee calculations and holidays, and do you include locums?
So when I spoke to you about full-time vet equivalents, from a human being's perspective, it's easier to look at the physical veterinary bodies you have in a room. When we do it with Profitdiagonostix, we do it slightly differently. We have a business intelligence formula that runs over your total wages. So basically what we do is, someone did say there, does that include locum wages? Yes, we do. So what Profitdiagonostix does is it looks at wages for your team. It looks at locum wages, and then it adjusts automatically for a commercial owner's wage. And then it applies a formula over your wages to calculate your full-time vet equivalents. So we find that actually adjusts fairly accurately and deals with sort of, people on leave and stuff. It's actually more accurate to look at it that way. The other point is where Mike measured in terms of patient advocacy and targets. The one thing Profitdiagonostix does do, if you're measuring, say, for an individual staff member, the volume of dentistry they've done versus a target for that particular period, if they're on leave for that particular period, it adjusts their target down to 0, because obviously you're not going to get them to recommend a dental if they're away for that month. So say they're away for the month of January, then the recommended target for that particular employee is 0. So it does adjust for them being on leave in terms of patient advocacy.